What would be 100 times worse if it were invisible? Also hydrogen fire, easier to ignite and invisible, loves to leak, both as a gas and as a liquid. The liquid is halfway invisible, due to a very low refractive index, and has a lot of burning potential. Folks at NASA use a simple way to verify that there's some burning hydrogen leak. They use long handle brooms made from some plant material, like sorghum. When approaching suspect spot, first put the broom there. If there's hydrogen fire, the broom will catch fire too, and most plant materials burn with a bright flame. There's some footage with guys walking around rockets and launch facilities with brooms. They're not sweeping, they are carrying portable invisible flame detectors. We use this same method to determine if there are microscopic hydraulic fluid leaks in structural test systems. A nearly invisible ultra-high pressure spray of hydraulic fluid in lines going to 20 different 1,000-pound actuators will slice the broom quickly and easily. Like invisible anime ninjas. I like my limbs, thank you very much. Plus that stuff is really bad for you if it gets in your bloodstream. Stop signs. Or bridges, like damn. Imagine being on the freeway crossing a river and just having to trust that all the signs were accurate. Yep, just follow this road that magically ends to the other side of the river and link up with the highway again. You're not gonna die. You won't fall off and drown or die on impact with the water, but it would look super fucking cool though, all the cars and trucks just hurtling through the air. Oh, also fire. Invisible fire would suck. Infinitely deep chasms on an invisible plane that greatly changes elevation and pitch for no reason. Sometimes while fucking lightning blinds the crew trying to figure out desperately which way to turn not to capsize the ship, as invisible waves of pressure grab men and throw them around while also weighing them down with a cold dampness which makes their clothes heavy. If water is invisible, so are ocean rainstorms where waves can reach hundreds of feet, and because the clouds, also being water vapor, are invisible, the only warning sign you'd have of your impending death was a faint tap, tap, tap of invisible raindrops on the deck, by which point it's probably far too late. Mosquitoes. I already hate that sound when near sleeping and they zoom past your ear. Imagine some flying hypodermal needles flying around taking your blood, but you can't see them. That would be terrifying if it was like that from the start. Before we could detect they are highly camouflaged bugs with infrared sights. Many folklore is now based on the demons who take your blood with ominous zooming sounds before they bite you. I think this would change the course of human development. Children. Imagine you're a parent, but as soon as your toddler goes into the child age range, they just disappear. They're not dead, they're not missing, you just can't see them. Are they right next to you or are they down the hall about to break your best friend's precious family heirloom? Good luck finding out if the kid decides not to answer you. Invisible fire is actually a thing that happens in some motorsport. Formula 1, I think it is, had a spate of incidents over the years. I am unsure if the fuel sources have been switched out these days or not, and I may have the specific vehicle type incorrect, but I'm sure Google and YouTube will furnish you with some results if it's something you want to see for yourself. I am deliberately not putting links in here as I am not a fan of seeing people in invisible fire more times than I absolutely have to in my life, but each to their own curiosity's sake. After all, curiosity is a fickle mistress. Your house. Imagine never having privacy in your shower or walking around naked, having sex. Now if only the outside walls were invisible, that'd be pretty cool. You'd be able to see if anybody was pulling some fuck shit outside on your lawn or something, and still have a protectionary barrier. I think I just invented windows. But also you could see inside, which would be interesting, sort of, like floating stories. I grew up around guns. My father owned guns and we were taught that they were not toys. Before we could ever use them, he required us to receive formal training in their use. I have grown up respecting them as tools. About 12 years ago, my wife, son and I were coming home from picking up two of my son's friends so they could spend the weekend with us. We came home to find two men robbing our house. I held the two thieves at gunpoint while my wife called the cops. We live in a rural town near a river and there is only one bridge across the river about 10 miles away. It took the cops nearly 20 minutes to get there. What would have happened if I wasn't armed, I can't say. But I can say I am forever glad they chose to comply with my commands and didn't escalate the threat, and I never was put in a position to have to fire. Number 1 is also my first reason. Grew up in a hunting house. Not fanatical, but we hunted pheasant and deer in season, where guns were part of childhood education with absolutely zero tolerance for even joking about how they could be misused or mishandled. Some are heirlooms and others are for use at the range or in hunting, but they are all locked in a gun safe with trigger locks, etc. etc. I don't at all understand anyone casually toting a gun around like a toy. As for number 2, I'm sorry that happened to you. I can't imagine the adrenaline terror of that situation. It's lucky for everyone that you were all able to walk away. When we arrived, they had their truck backed up to the front deck and were carrying out stuff and loading it into their truck. I waited for them to come out of the front door, pointed my gun at them and told them to drop our stuff and keep their hands up in the air. They did as I asked and we stood there face to face for an eternity. We could hear the sirens in the distance and it took forever for them to get there. As soon as they pulled into the driveway, I put the gun on the ground, put my hands in the air and backed away from the gun. The cops cuffed me and my wife as well as the two thieves until they could sort out what was going on. Self-defense. Where I live there are regular home invasions that sometimes result in death and I cannot rely on police to arrive in time to protect me. By the time they arrive I will already have been dead for 20 minutes. Edit. Since this got a lot of interest, I will provide some extra information. I live in South Africa, out on the plots on the outskirts of a city. These plots are small-scale commercial farms with dairy cattle, orchards, butcheries, animal nurseries, etc. Homes here are quite isolated and far apart. If you scream, your neighbors won't hear you. Even in the city suburbs, home invasions are common. People will drive around and if they see a homeowner outside their property they will pull up, jump out, put a gun against the homeowner's head and make them take them into the house and disclose all their valuables, or they break in and catch the people inside off guard. A high school friend of mine lost his father in a midnight home invasion. His father was shot in the head in bed as he slept. Another schoolmate lost his grandfather when a robber climbed over the wall and shot his grandfather in their backyard. My cousin's ex-boyfriend was shot through the neck and killed by home invaders when he managed to untie himself and tried fleeing the house. They ran after him and just outside the front door they got him, and then on the street, rural dirt road, where I live, one family was held at gunpoint for 3 hours as their house was cleaned out. Just 4 houses away from me, an old couple who own a bed and breakfast were tied up while the invaders cleaned out their house. One of them boiled water in the kettle and then poured it over the legs of the old man. This happened in 2019. When I was at university, I phoned one of my classmates right in the middle of a home invasion at his house. I phoned him because we were writing a test the next day and I needed some help understanding some of the math we would be tested on. He didn't answer the phone. Instead, it was some angry-sounding guy who screamed at me over the phone at the top of his lungs, "I don't want to talk to you," and then hung up. I phoned the police thinking that someone had stolen my friend's phone, but never followed up. The next day at university, my friend showed up with his leg bandaged. He told us about the home invasion. He was tied up with his mother. His father was overseas on a business trip. One of the criminals cut his calf with a machete. He managed to successfully escape to the neighbor's house though and phoned the police, and was told they were made aware earlier of a possible robbery at their address by me. The police arrived not long after, but upon realizing that my friend had escaped, the invaders had left the property, and so the police unfortunately did not catch them. Every so often you hear some good news, that a homeowner managed to successfully thwart an invasion by discharging their weapon. In a house 1 road away from me, a homeowner shot and hit an invader on their stairwell. The criminals managed to get away in a vehicle, but there was a trail of blood leading down the stairs and outside the house. Hopefully the crook didn't make it and got dumped somewhere in a shallow grave by his accomplices. I inherited a shotgun and a pistol. Whenever I'm home alone, the pistol does not leave my side and the shotgun is hidden a place where I can quickly grab it but no one will be able to find it. It's a very reasonable concern. It is worth noting, however, that neither CWD nor Scrappy, the sheep equivalent from which CWD is thought to have originated, have been documented in animal-to-human transmission. This actually is immensely reassuring to me, when you consider how persistent prions are in a neutral environment, how long each of those diseases have been around, and how much time people have spent outdoors in infected areas. Life. Aside from hunting and helping farming relatives defending their cattle, the following really drove the need home. Working in high school, a guy came at me with a knife to get into my workplace. Luckily my manager carried and was following me out and pulled his weapon. Guy stopped real quick. Shortly after high school, a 50-plus-year-old creeper waited behind the dumpster at work to jump a 15-year-old coworker. The manager there also carried and ended that. Also real quick. Friend marries a woman with baggage. Her ex breaks into their place at night and attacks with a knife. He kept a gun on the nightstand and the ex ceased to be a threat. Fast forward and my son's just been born and now I've taken the hint and got a gun. In a new city and a man breaks into our home. Got the drop and he tore off. Nobody died in any but number 3. But I know for a fact at this point that my military parents and grandparents were always right. Guns are tools, and like all tools, it's the person holding them that determines how good or bad the work done with them is. Edit. Since I've seen several comments with some misconceptions, let me reiterate that 3 was a friend and not me, and all were in 3 different areas over a large amount of time. I am 37 and have moved around a lot, and the more places you go the more you can get into strange circumstances. We have 1 AR, 1 shotgun, and 1 Glock. For us it's just the same as having a fire extinguisher. It's something that you wish you never have to use. But if that day ever comes, you'll be glad to have it. The world is a crazy place and you just never know. I'm by no means a gun nut, but I was in the military and I did have to serve 3.5 years overseas, numerous tours in the Middle East. The world is one scary ass place. Horrible things happen and horrible people exist. I pray America never turns that way. But if shit goes wild and we have to get the fuck out of Dodge, I'll be glad to have that tar on my back when it's my job to protect my wife and 3 kids, because you can bet your ass they will have guns, whomever they may be. Most of my guns are heirlooms I've inherited and restored, and I love to see that old wood come back to life and those dingy barrels shine up. One I'm not sure what to do with is my grandfather's L.C. Smith double-barreled 12-gauge that he used to put food on the table. He fired it without realizing there was a mud dauber nest in one barrel and blew both barrels apart. He sawed it off one too short to be legal, and although the serial number shows it to be much older than we thought, 1902, I think, it's just a few years too young to be exempted by the ATF. Dear ATF, I'm no longer in possession of the barrel. Rural Maine. My 12-year-old niece was walking the orchards on our farm one late afternoon and came across a random guy hanging out on our property. We lived on a busy road and sometimes had transients hanging around. She ran to our house, which was closest. Her mother's farm was adjacent to ours. We called the cops and told them we had a prowler. An hour and a half later, no show. So we called dispatch again. We were told the cops drove by and saw the lights were on in the house, so they assumed everything was okay, because you only get murdered in the dark. I hunt squirrels, rabbits, grouse, ducks, geese, deer, and elk. Guns make that quite a bit easier. I also bow hunt for deer. I enjoy the challenge of precision shooting and take pride in my ability. I don't own them for defense. I have younger kids, so all of my guns are locked in a safe, and all the ammunition is locked in a separate safe. It would have to be an extremely patient attacker in order for me to use them for that purpose. We have the same shit in NYC. In a single point of entry apartment on the 5th floor, if Jason in a hockey mask comes in with a sickle, I am obligated to run and flee first before I can even hit him with a baseball bat or my fists. Nonsense like this is why my wife and I bought a home in Texas. I was born in Canada and my entire family lives there still. I'm a US citizen and our tax level in NY is literally as high as Ontario with zero of the benefits, plus that crap. Texas is fucked too in its own ways, but I'm overpaying for nothing and being constrained by laws that make zero sense. Self-defense, partly in the home, but majority for hiking in the woods. I'd rather not be a predator food. Great sport hobby, and always one I've shared with my dad, as well as friends. Everything from handguns to rifles to shotguns are fun in their own way. I particularly love trap shooting, nothing more satisfying than nailing a moving target. Guns are timeless, and last forever. I've got guns from before from my grandfathers on both sides. Some of them still shoot, too. Both my grandfathers are gone, so they're nice heirlooms. If you're an intelligent, responsible owner, guns are very safe. They are tools and or toys. And one last note, every time the debate comes up, I state that roughly 60% of gun deaths in the US are suicides. We need to talk about mental health reform before we talk about gun laws. Everyone seems to have collective amnesia about summer of 2020 when there were feds wearing unmarked uniforms and driving unmarked vans snatching protesters off the streets. If they don't have to identify themselves as cops or charge you with a crime, they don't have to let you have a lawyer or a phone call either. People say they have to read you your rights, or they have to charge you with a crime to hold you longer than 24 hours. No, they don't. No one is going to make them. We got a little taste of dictatorship, and for some reason people are still comfortable with the idea of those very same people being the only ones with guns.